The winds of change are blowing across my loins. My beef tenderloins, that is, and we're back on SFO Grimhammer with the battle between the Beastmen of Tzeentch and the menace below. It's time to make it rain. Fire from the sky and bolts of lightning from our butts. Tzaangors are a ridiculously good unit, one we spotlighted in a couple of videos before, and they're in pretty much an ideal scenario when facing down the Ratmen. So let's see if they can live up to their lofty reputation and what the Skaven can do to counter them, because this time they know what to expect. This was actually the third Beastmen vs Skaven battle I played over the last couple days. The first two were absolute stomps because if you're not prepared for them, they can run you over completely. So the big question is, what makes them special? Well, they're a marked Bestigor unit with magical attacks, bonus versus large, and 50 speed. But they bring a whole new dynamic to the Beastmen roster with Skyfires, which are timed volleys of magic missiles that serve kind of as a bridge between archers and mages. 45-second cooldown with 5 volleys total per unit, very accurate and fantastic versus tightly packed chaff. Bad versus heavy armor, great versus naked foot troops, and they add a bunch of cutting potential that base game Beastmen simply don't have access to. Of course, this is a Tzeentch-themed army, so Chaos Spawn are an important component, as is a Mark of Tzeentch Doom Bull, the set of blazing blue plate armor. Poor melee defense, but a searing flame contact effect, massive weapon strength, and 30 bonus first large. Everything else in this build is honestly pretty straightforward. Now, as stuff gets underway, you can see the Tzaangors are positioned very aggressively. This is to make use of their stock, their long range, and their ability to just put their initial Skyfires on cooldown. Because each of those volleys has a 45-second downtime, and you only get 5 of them, they need to be very spaced out. So you want to use those initial ones very quickly so you have enough time to kite around and get value out of them. And their initial volleys will be devastating. They're firing into some Night Runners right now, and that's pretty much an ideal target for them. They can bypass any and all physical resistance, and Clannish and Ninjas are lightly armored, low HP per model, and tons of models. They're not tightly packed in the way that Plague Monks or Clan Rats are, so a bit of that explosive damage will go to waste, but still kind of hard to argue with the results, right? 2 Skyfire volleys hit home, Night Runners are already heading out. Of course, the Skaven do have some tools for zoning Tzaangors out. They've got Doom Wheels that can do that pretty effectively. They have too much armor to be bothered by either the magic missiles or their bonus versus large spears. And we've got some Clan Vulcan's Tail Slashers and a Plague Priest in the center with a Master Assassin at the helm, whose Warpstone Shurikens are bonus versus infantry as his weapon strength. And you might be wondering why there are 2 Death Runners on the field too. Kind of an Eshin-themed build here. Usually Death Runners are reserved for cracking through heavy armor, and the Beastmen have very little in the way of that. But they're great versus all types of infantry regardless, as long as they aren't spotted. They won't be seen until they're right on top of the enemy, so they can't be shot by Skyfires easily, and of course, their Vanguard and sneaky shenanigans allow them to put pressure on the Tzaangors without much counterplay. So as long as they don't get spotted by Centaurs and charged to pieces, they should be good, and they'll be able to attack from some weird angles where the Tzaangors will want to retreat from the main line that's encroaching upon them, and then the Death Runners can spring their ambush from behind and catch the Beastmen in a bit of a conundrum. So yeah, these Skyfires so far with that 45-second cooldown, not been able to bust out their second volleys yet. The first ones were great, and of course this is one way the Beastmen like to play. Throw chaff into the grinder, allow yourself some space to kite around the Tzaangors. That's what we're playing around here, so if you need to sacrifice an infantry unit or 2, no big deal. And if they take that bait, blast some Vile Tides in there, and that'll get some good value for sure. Probably not worth it to reveal either of the Death Runners so early. They're a pretty effective counter to Tzaangors if they can get on target, so holding on to that trap card until it's time to Yugi Moto them is likely the right call. Second Arcane Volley is beginning their descent now, and the chaff is going to bear the brunt of all that magical firepower. Even Clan Vulcan's Tail Slashers and their high flame resistance still taking a beating here, and the first Death Runner unit with a Vile Tide and a couple more Skyfires sent their way, well, they're feeling pretty unhealthy too. Ignore the balance bar of this game, or really any game on SFO Grimhammer. Beastmen and Skaven especially have some really wonky balance bars that are incredibly lopsided right from the start. And Beastmen began this battle with a big lead on it, so it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't translate them to winning or losing more battles, so just ignore that element. But obviously, Tzaangors are feasting in these opening stages. And the difficulty the Skaven face here is that most of their units that are fast enough to actually catch up to them, like Rat Ogres, well, they can close the gap, but now they have to deal with a bunch of bonus for large spears. Brood Horrors can also do the same thing, but they'll get munched alive by all that bonus versus large. So Doomwheel and someone like Ghoritch is a pretty smart combination for some terror and speed that can close the gap and actually deal damage to the spears while not being super vulnerable. Just saw the second Vile Tide. A lot of Ratman summons coming out of the woodwork. They're not called the Menace Below for nothing. Goreherd and Tzaangor is breaking off, and yeah, Ghoritch is beating up on them pretty bad. That massive bonus versus infantry and huge armor values, meaning he can just kind of wait in and not care too much, even though he is technically a large target. But on this side, Chaos Spawn, they're unbreakable, they've got poison, and they have regeneration in SFO as well. So they are a pretty nice frontliner monstrous infantry. You can kind of just get thrown in, you don't have to worry about them too much. Now, of course, Clan Eshin and all their focus fire will hurt them. They'll drop quickly to all that kind of skirmish fire. They just don't have a lot of armor, but you also don't have to worry about them breaking off and running for the hills, so that's nice. Skaven have bust through on their right flank. The Beastmen left. Most of that was because of Ghoritch, the Castellan of Hell Pit, and that Doomwheel busting through the Tzaangors and starting to get into the rear, putting a lot of pressure on those units in the rear. 3 Ungor archers and 3 Tzaangors have moved back there. Meanwhile, the Zanbul in the center of the Skaven formation, fighting alongside his Chaos Spawn and a few infantry regiments, and they're doing what they can to stem the tide of the Vermintide in the center. Look at all that focus fire, a storm of magic coming out of the Tzeentch Beastmen and the Ungor Raiders, just dropping the hammer on those poor Clan Vulcan's tail slashers. The rest of the Skaven infantry are following up behind. They've still got Doomwheel and Rat Ogre support. Clan Eshin stuff moving in from the flanks now. Death Runners in the rear should have already made their move. Might have been momentarily forgotten about. They could strike at those Ungor Raiders when they get some control under them. A rear charge would be nice here because the Skaven are just low armor, right? All their stuff, except for Ghoritch and the Doomwheel, is pretty low armor. So Ungor Raiders, already a very cost-efficient unit, even more effective in this kind of scenario. Another Skyfire volley ripping through all this chaff, and that's really the benefit the Tzaangors are bringing to the battlefield right now. The fact that they can so easily clear out all these meat shields that have huge HP pools that would normally be taking a long time to kill off. Like, sure, they'd rout a couple times, but they aren't just making them rout. They're straight up killing them with these very effective volleys on the tightly packed infantry regiment. So, doing great right now. Master Assassin is beating the Zanbul in a straight up fight at the moment, and finally, the Death Runners are here. Their concealment bombs kept them hidden up until the last moment, and now they're on top of the archers, and it will be difficult for the Ungor Raiders to escape. There is a Tzaangor summon with Beastman Roar activated. Savage Dominion trying to catch up the Death Runners and prevent them from closing the gap on all these skirmish troops. Unfortunately, didn't quite come out in time. Now he'll have the opportunity to fire in with some massive boulders, and the Centaurs and Tzaangors coming in to close the gap on the Death Runners in the rear and take the pressure, relieve the pressure on the Ungor Raiders. Ghoritch, meanwhile, is fighting some Chaos Spawn, which is not really where he wants to be. He can't use his terror there. He can't use his massive bonus versus infantry, but he'll still beat the brakes off of them, or at least he should do. And the Eshin Assassins in the rear, well, they're now fighting 3 full units of Beastmen. That might prove difficult for them. Tzaangor stomping on some stuff in melee too, smushing it into paste, and the Zanbul dropping perilously low against that Master Assassin and the Doomwheel. But it doesn't take much to kill a Master Assassin if you get the right engagement, and yeah, his physical resistance will be useless against the magical attacks of the Zanbul, and of course it also has 600 plus weapon strength, which is terrifying. So against that and a Bray Shaman, it was too much for the Master Assassin. He's not dead, but he is breaking off for the moment. Plague Monk summons from the Plague Priest, and a lot more Vermintides could be on the way in the Beastmen rear. We might be able to turn things around. Nice volley. Skyfires going in. Again, better versus tightly packed infantry. Not amazing versus monstrous infantry or single entity monsters, but enough to rout them off after they had already taken so much damage. And Ghoritch has not been able to finish off the Chaos Spawn. The regen has proved to be too much. The poison, that debuff to his stats has been a big problem, and I guess he only has 27 melee defense right now, so yeah, he's struggling for sure. He might round off, and the Doomwheel just went down to the Doom Bull. Those are both big losses for the Skaven if Ghoritch will not return. He might, though. Meanwhile, Tzaangor, the Savage Dominion summon, doing what he does best, smashing hordes of infantry with big-ass boulders. And the Plague Monks and the Vermintide summons, they go and learn today that you do not mess with a massive Beastie Boy Cyclops. Look at how much damage that Boulder Throw just did, up to 144 kills, and degenning pretty slowly, as are the Vermintide and Plague Monk summons. Skyfires coming in from behind. That one, not a particularly good volley. It seems like at their max range, they can sometimes lose some of their accuracy, but if they're right in the middle of their fire arc, they are hyper accurate. In fact, I think it's one of the things that makes them so powerful in terms of their ranged DPS. They just seem to rarely miss shots against large groups of infantry. And it's nicely spread out too. It goes to each of the models, so you don't end up overkilling any particular model. You just kind of spread it throughout the entire unit, and that's why we see so much of their HP drop when they get a good volley in. Tzaangors are also decent in melee too. They are a Bestigor unit. Obviously, they're not going to be as effective as Pestigors in terms of resilience or Korngors in terms of pure aggression and melee prowess, but they can defend themselves. They have decent stats, and they have a lot of speed. So they can get in, get behind the Plague Monks and the Vermintide summons, and run them off the field. And it's been a great showing for them in every single capacity you could possibly think of. From range, in melee, using their maneuverability to skirt around the outside of the battlefield and just be hella annoying from start to finish. That's going to be army losses, and the Thagaraki are running off the map. Altdorf Outskirts belongs to the Beastie Boys. The Bray Herds have won this one, and take a look at those kill counts. Of course, we talk about it a lot in SFO Grimhammer, the way chaff works. The kill counts are going to be inflated. The damage value for each of the Tzaangors wasn't incredible. They paid for themselves just about, and that's pretty much it. But against the Skaven, paying for yourself, killing all that chaff, is actually very impressive. It means that you killed a bunch of units off. And they need that chaff to function. Like, it's a big part of what makes the Vermintide the Vermintide. If you don't have a lot of bodies to throw at the opposition, if they're instantly being cleared off by Skyfires, then you're running into some issues. So I think Tzaangors are an incredible unit against the Skaven. The Ratmen have very few reliable ways to catch them, and the units that can aren't a massive threat to them. Now, they do have a pretty poor AP split on their spears, so fast armored monsters or cavalry can mess them up pretty good. You wouldn't want to bring them against a faction like the Empire, for instance, I don't think, or at least you wouldn't want to invest a lot in them, because they'll just get shot to pieces and Imperial Knights will run them down without too much care. But against factions like the Skaven, who don't have a lot of fast armored stuff, the Tzaangors can just kite and keep using their stalk to stay out of sight of weapon teams until they're ready to unleash some more Skyfires, and when they do, they can kill weapon teams and they can kill all that tightly packed infantry. Now, I do think mortars could potentially be very good here. You would just have to be very careful, because 2 Skyfire volleys and they're just straight up dead. Any weapon team is straight up dead after 2 Skyfires. So you need to be on the ball, use that superior range, and make sure you stay out of range of the Tzaangors, because if they sneak up on you and get a couple volleys in, you're going to lose those units, and that'll be a very expensive loss. So yeah, mortars could generate an insane amount of value here against Tzaangors if they're given time to land a few good shots, but you just need to make sure you effectively zone the Tzaangors out with Doom Wheels or something like that to give them the space they need. Chaos Spawn were also solid here. Ghoritch was stuck fighting Chaos Spawn for a really long time. It's not really where he wants to be. I actually thought he would do better in that fight than he did, but he is a bonus versus infantry specialist, and he was fighting against a lot of really high open strength monsters, so I guess it's not that surprising. If you get fully surrounded, that can be pretty painful. But yeah, Skaven and Beastmen, both very good factions in SFO, but the Bray Herds are a new animal entirely when you talk about their new Bestigor stuff. Which, it's not new, it's been around for a while, but new compared to vanilla. And yeah, if this is a fraction of the power they can have in Game 3, when they get marked Bestigor units, well, it'll be a pretty crazy show. I love it. I mean, it honestly adds so much dynamism to the Beastmen roster to be able to effectively kite in that manner, to move and scoot and shoot. They're just really fun to use. So I would love to spotlight them some more. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one.